In September 2023, beneath the ruined floorboards of an abandoned fishing cabin, a striking discovery was made by a lone explorer. The earth was disturbed, flattened with time, but still marked by a strange pattern remnants of a plastic sheet. Shadows of human forms beneath the dirt. A woman curled protectively around her abdomen. Beside her, a man sprawled forward, hands outstretched. For 12 years, their story had been nothing but idle speculation in the quiet fishing villages surrounding the remote Lake Clearwater in northern Maine. But it truly began one cold evening in October 2011. 36-year-old Simon Bennett and his wife, Hannah, age 30, were avid lovers of the outdoors. Simon, a civil engineer known for meticulous planning, and Hannah, a college literature professor with a taste for unscripted adventure, had been married 4 years. They lived on the outskirts of Portland with a mischievous orange tabby and a nursery full of untouched baby clothes, a frequent topic of family conversation. For Hannah was 7 months pregnant with their first child. Hoping for a final escape before parenthood, Simon suggested they hike and camp along a rarely visited section of the Northwoods Trail, an area famous for its tranquility and, in autumn, for breathtaking views of fiery maple leaves reflected on glassy black water. Hannah agreed, eager for one last adventure. They planned a gentle 40-mile circuit along the lake's eastern shore, to be finished at a cozy fireside inn by Sunday night. On Friday, October 14th, they set off in their silver Subaru, arriving at the trailhead near Old Mill Landing just before noon. Locals waved amiably, accustomed to seeing out-of-towners in autumn, though few ventured so deep so late in the season. Simon checked in at the bait shop, buying a thermos of coffee, a map, 2 sandwiches, and a bag of dried blueberries. The shopkeeper, a woman with a sharp memory, would later recall Hannah's bright laugh and Simon's calm assurance, but also note the clouds gathering over the pines. Simon, always attentive, insisted Hannah carry little more than snacks and a lightweight rain poncho. The tent, sleeping bags, food, and aging camp stove went in his own pack. They set out, boots crunching over pine needles beneath a drifting mist. At 5 p.m., Simon called his sister in Boston. He told her they had walked 9 miles already. Hannah was tired but content, and he promised to check in again Saturday evening. She heard laughter in the background, Hannah's voice, teasing about Simon's overcautious navigation. They sounded perfectly at ease. After this call, contact was lost. By nightfall, frost rimmed the leaves, and the only lights on the lake were distant lanterns of fishermen across the water. No one saw the Bennetts reach their intended campsite on Fisherman's Bluff. The next morning, when Simon failed to call, his sister called his phone. Voicemail. She tried Hannah's no answer. By midday, she reached out to the local ranger post, explaining her concern. The following day, Sunday, the Bennett's family filed a missing persons report. Rangers searched the trailhead, finding the Subaru untouched. Lunch wrappers neatly stowed, the Bennett's dog-eared trail map on the dash, spare clothes in the back seat. Nothing was stolen or out of place. Over the next 48 hours, volunteers and search teams combed the lakeside. Charred wood and burnt paper at a fire ring a mile in suggested someone had recently camped. Blueberry wrappers matching those from the bait shop littered the ground. But the Bennetts, their tent, and packs were gone. Deeper in the woods, muddy boot prints stopped abruptly at the shore of a narrow inlet. Heavy rain had begun overnight, washing out signs of passage. Cadaver dogs, brought from Bangor, traced a scent along the embankment, but lost it at a tangle of roots and fallen logs. As days passed, the search broadened. Retired trappers shared rumors of old logging roads and hunting shacks, where misfortune had befallen other outsiders lost in these woods. Rangers checked each dilapidated structure, peering through broken windows and rotted doors. At one cabin, they found ashes still warm, but no trace of the missing couple. Hannah's parents flew up from Vermont, pinning photos and pleas for information on trailhead notice boards and at the inn where Simon and Hannah were to stay. Each sunrise brought new volunteers, but each evening, the forest gave up nothing. 2 weeks slipped by. The official search wound down. Helicopters scanned the acreage, but infrared revealed no sign of life. The Bennett's families, refusing to abandon hope, hired their own investigators. Some wondered if the couple had staged their disappearance, though nothing in their lives hinted at such a plan. Bank accounts remained untouched. Hannah's teaching contract was never canceled. The baby's room, half-painted pale blue, remained waiting. Theories abounded. A misstep and fatal fall. A medical emergency. A chance encounter with a dangerous stranger. Yet the stillness of Clearwater never offered answers. Years passed. The changing seasons came and went on the quiet shores of Lake Clearwater. The Bennett story faded into the background of local legend. One more whisper of the North Woods, told in low voices by firelight. By 2023, few remembered the missing couple. Their house had long since been sold. A new family lived there, unaware of the blue nursery and the quiet heartbreak that had once filled those walls. But the forest ancient, patient remembered everything. On September 27, 2023, Owen Carter, a 39-year-old wildlife photographer from Connecticut, set out on his annual solitary trek through the Maine wilderness. He was an experienced loner, in search of unusual moments in nature, an owl's silent hunt, the jittering path of a river otter, starfall over the black pines. He planned a 4-day hike, this time circling Lake Clearwater by the very trails the Bennetts had once walked. Owen spent his first 3 days making slow progress along the shoreline. The weather was fickle, misty mornings, sudden squalls, the air tinged with the scent of damp moss and wood smoke. On the 4th morning, heavy clouds gathered, and by midday, a cold rain began to pelt the forest. Owen pressed deeper into the woods, choosing a narrow offshoot path marked only by an old orange flag. His plan was to find shelter and ride out the storm. He was passing through a thicket of spruce when he glimpsed a warped metal roof in the trees to his left, a forgotten fisherman's cabin that seemed swallowed by the undergrowth. Drawn by curiosity and the worsening weather, he made his way to the door, which hung off its hinges. The air inside was thick with rot and mold. The floor was mostly moss and dirt, but Owen spotted an odd patch in the far corner. The earth there was unnaturally raised, as if someone had buried something years before. He knelt and gently moved the soil. His glove brushed against slick plastic, then something harder beneath a tangle of faded fabric, fragments of bone. Heart racing, Owen staggered back, struggling to process what he had found. His satellite phone couldn't get a signal in the storm, but as the rain slackened, Owen hurried back to the trail. After nearly 2 hours of fast walking, he reached a ridge with enough signal to call emergency services. Rangers arrived before dusk, tracking Owen's trail back to the cabin. Flashlights swept the shadowy interior. Slowly, methodically, they uncovered 2 sets of human remains, one unmistakably female, the other male, both protected by the decaying tarp. The woman's skeleton still cradled her midsection where the remnants of maternity pants clung. The man lay collapsed, as if shielding her. By dawn, the site buzzed with investigators. Evidence was collected: melted scraps of nylon, a rusted, engraved flask marked with the initials RT, a pocket knife, several decayed food wrappers. Rangers found an ancient campfire ring nearby, sifting through half-burned debris. In the ashes, they located an old metal button and the muddy remains of an empty medicine bottle. The bones were taken to the state forensics lab in Augusta. Analysis revealed both individuals had died a violent death. The woman, approximately 30, in her third trimester, had suffered blunt force trauma to the skull and defensive injuries on her arms. The man, in his mid-30s, showed multiple knife wounds to his torso and arms, with a fractured skull likely delivered as a final blow. DNA testing soon confirmed what locals feared. The remains belonged to Simon and Hannah Bennett, gone for 12 years. Their families, now scattered across the East Coast, were notified. But the most chilling discovery was the set of fingerprints left deep in the grooves of the engraved flask. These prints did not belong to either victim. Investigators ran the fingerprints from the engraved flask through state and federal databases. Within days, they found a match. Raymond Tucker, a 52-year-old former forest ranger who had once lived on the fringes of Clearwater Township. Tucker had a troubled history, including an assault charge from 2009 that ended in acquittal for lack of evidence, and several minor run-ins with local hikers. It was said he didn't like outsiders encroaching on his woods. Officers drove out to the isolated cabin where Tucker now lived, deep in the woods north of the lake. The place was surrounded by piles of rusted gear and broken-down snowmobiles. Tucker answered the door, a gaunt, sunburned man with piercing blue eyes and a wild tangle of graying hair. He didn't argue or hesitate when shown the search warrant. Inside, his home was cluttered with maps, nature journals, old radios, a wall covered in grainy trail camera photographs. In a battered notebook on the kitchen table, police found cryptic daily entries. Unfamiliar voices near West Shore, 8:40 p.m. Man and pregnant woman camping by old dock, disturbing the quiet. Took care of the disruption order restored. The entry dated October 14, 2011, was darker. Rain coming. All is silent now. No more strangers haunting my woods. At first, Tucker remained silent at the station. Then, with a flat, emotionless cadence, he confessed everything. How he'd watched the Bennetts from the trees, convinced that their laughter and light had broken the unwritten rules of the land. He asked them to leave, but Hannah had doubled over, in labor, screaming into the night for help. Simon begged for assistance, waving his cell phone in desperation. Tucker claimed the noise and panic infuriated him, that he couldn't stand the chaos. He struck Hannah first, knocking her to the ground with a blow from his flashlight. Simon lunged to defend her, and in the struggle, Tucker pulled his old ranger's knife and stabbed him repeatedly. In grim detail, he described dragging the bodies inside the cabin, burying them beneath the floor, and burning their belongings to cleanse the place. He wrapped the flask, a keepsake from his days as a ranger, and the knife in a plastic tarp, for luck. A psychiatric evaluation deemed Tucker fit to stand trial. Though he exhibited signs of paranoid personality disorder, he understood the nature and consequences of his actions. In January 2024, charges of first-degree murder and desecration of remains were formally filed. The entire region braced for a trial that would revisit all its old scars and woodland superstitions. The hearing drew crowds of journalists and townsfolk alike. Hannah's mother and Simon's sister sat side by side on the hard bench, clutching each other's hands as Tucker recounted his version of the restoration of order. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming. DNA, fingerprints, the notebook, and the grisly confession. After a short deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge's sentence was swift and final life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The Bennett family finally brought Simon and Hannah home, laying them to rest in a sun-dappled Portland cemetery. On their stone, beneath their names and dates, were etched the words, "Together, never forgotten." Below, space was left for the child who would always remain a mystery. Owen Carter never returned to Lake Clearwater. The forest, which had kept its secrets for so long, at last exhaled them back into the world, its silence now carrying the echo of truth. The abandoned fisherman's cabin was torn down after the verdict, its land left to the red maples and creeping moss. Tourists, hikers, and villagers still wander those woods, unaware of the sorrow and violence once hidden beneath their feet, and the story told now in whispers, wherever the wind rattles the autumn leaves. Years slipped quietly by on the shores of Lake Clearwater. The shadow of the Bennett case lingered in the minds of some villagers and rangers, long after the reporters left, and autumn's fiery leaves yielded to the silent hush of snow. The woods, once a tapestry of unanswered questions and whispered warnings, slowly reclaimed their peace. For many, the story became another mystery surrendered to the forest, something to shudder at over flickering campfires, nothing more. But for those whose lives had been touched by Simon and Hannah, the emptiness did not entirely fade. Every October, Hannah's mother returned to the old inn near Old Mill Landing, now renovated, bustling with leaf peepers. She walked the now overgrown trails and left wildflowers by the water's edge. Simon's sister made it a ritual to visit the Portland cemetery, placing a toy boat on the grave for the nephew she never met. The people of Clearwater, too, changed. The fisherman's hut rotted away, absorbed by the forest, as if the earth itself forgave what it could not explain. Occasionally, new hikers would ask about the old haunting tragedy. Some locals would shake their heads and say nothing. Others would quietly remind them to respect the wild, to listen to the hush between the trees, and to remember that the land keeps its own memories, no matter how deep they are buried. For Owen Carter, the photographer who stumbled on the truth, fame was fleeting, but the sorrow lingered. He published a photo essay soon after. Images of mist, tangled roots, the play of sunlight on dark water. There were no pictures of the cabin, or the grave, or the police. But every shot seemed to capture a world heavy with the weight of things unseen. On windy autumn nights, when the campfires burn low, some say you can hear soft laughter drifting from the lake. Whether it is memory or just imagination, the silence of Lake Clearwater is never truly empty, not anymore.